Hello and welcome to the Big Ideas Show. I'm Liu Batchelor and today I'm joined by Carl Adams from Primal Roots. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
In the hot seat. Can you tell us in a nutshell though, what is it that Primal Roots does?
So we run woodland-based fitness activity gym, if you like, where we reconnect people to primal movement patterns, all done outside, mindful movement, and we particularly want to work with people in recovery from addiction or who've experienced homelessness. And that's founded on our experience as directors of the company.
Brilliant.
So you pay if you can afford it, and if you're in recovery from addiction or have experienced homelessness at all, then it's free.
Brilliant. Sounds good. We're going to be hearing more about that after these titles. Here on the Big Ideas Show. This is the show all about bringing you the people behind some of the social businesses, the social projects that are going on in our community. I want to do a quick thank you to our sponsors, the Glass Whiteboard Company, the Grand here in Folkestone, who are our venue, and all our contributors and crew who you'll see at the end of the video. Without further ado, Carl, thank you for joining me. And I would say, whenever I think about you or whenever your name comes up, I always think about you as Mr. Social Enterprise. You've done like loads of stuff, supported loads of people, haven't you, in the past? And we're going to come on to that and hear your story and how you've ended up kind of being so passionate about social enterprise. But I want to start really by talking more about what feels like to me, and when we've spoken before, your social enterprise, the thing you're most passionate about, which is Primal Roots and this idea of activity, fitness, and supporting people kind of who wouldn't otherwise be able to get access to it. But I don't know whether I've done that justice, so I want to hand it over to you. Kind of tell me a little bit more about Primal Roots, kind of what it is you do, but specifically like the values behind it and why it's so important for you.
Yeah, we founded it, myself and my colleague Steve Denby, who's a fitness coach of 25, 27 years possibly by now. Huge experience in the fitness industry, and it's just his methods that were applied to my life and that helped me so much that we put the two worlds together. I've got quite a bit of experience in social enterprise, not a huge amount, but the last 10 years probably. Well, I've helped other people come up with social enterprise ideas and put those dreams into action. But it's never been anything that has been my particular passion. So, for example, the first one I helped set up was around diverting food waste and getting it into a kitchen, food that would otherwise go to landfill, and then working with people who wouldn't be able to afford a meal out or something like that. So people would pay what they can afford for a meal. And it went really well, but I'm not a chef. And also helped a gardening business. So supremely talented gardener who ended up working with ex-offenders. He took their garden into the Chelsea Flower Show. Fantastic, really good, but I'm not a gardener. And the same principle with a woodworker, a really talented woodworker down on Romney Marsh, and he created some fantastic oak furniture, oak flooring that ended up in stately homes, and I helped him and got involved as a director as well with that particular business called Growth Rings, and ended up working all over the country in some really good places. But I'm not a woodworker, and sadly that business ended up closing down. And like anything really, or I think what we're about to come on to a bit later on, you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. So it was when I was actually trying to find my way through an addiction myself and get into recovery that I ended up finding that fitness, and particularly outdoor fitness through my friend Steve, was something where the light bulb went off. And without trying to sound too woo-woo, I felt like I came alive when I was being trained by him, and that actually did lead to my recovery in the end. And we were talking one day about social enterprise. I came in actually for a session with him about social enterprise, and I was working with the guys down in the woodworking workshop. And people with long-term addictions, everything you can imagine. And a lot of them had long periods of sobriety and they were doing really well. But one thing they weren't doing was looking after themselves physically. So for example, they were coming in and they would eat their first meal of the day about 4 p.m. or something, or on their way out of the workshop, and it would be a microwaved ready meal or whatever. So I came into my session with Steve one day and I said, oh man, these guys are doing really well. Imagine if they could get what I'm getting here from you.
Yeah.
And he said, do you know what, I'm sick of working, you know, I really do enjoy working like with people, but you know, people who can afford it, it's great, you know, because you're talking like 80, 90 pound an hour for some like high-end personal training or whatever. People who really need it can't afford it, the people you're talking about. And you know, we just both looked at each other and said, let's do it.
Amazing.
And that was at the tail end of 2015.
Yep.
And we worked with a friend, Richard Barnard, who has experienced homelessness himself, lived on the streets, addiction, been in recovery for about 9 years. And he worked for Porchlight at the time, which is a homelessness charity that does the most work in Kent. And we started delivering sessions, so Steve's workouts in the woods with homeless people, and getting some fantastic results. And you know, we were doing it 1 day a week, and then we thought, you know what, this is what we're meant to do. Just so many taps on the shoulder and like leading up to that. Yeah. And we both said, well, we got to turn around, otherwise that tap's going to go away. You know? So we put it together and formed the company in 2016.
Definitely. And
February.
And so what would you say, I guess, from all the work that you've done, I mean, we could talk at length about, like, more about the sessions. You gave us kind of an overview. So feel free to kind of build on that. But what would you say at the core of it, that doing the fitness sessions, doing the outdoor fitness sessions in particular, and your approach gives people that they're not necessarily otherwise getting?
The thing about the gym, you know, and it works for a lot of people, probably most people even, if they can stick with it and go through a training program, particularly if they've got a coach as well. But there was something about going to the gym that just didn't work for me. Yeah. And it was actually the gym where Steve is based, but he did stuff outside as well. And there's something about the fluorescent lights, you know, why would you recreate the same conditions that drag you down? So you've got the bright lights, you've got the bad dance music. I've had enough of that, or even good dance music, you know. And it was when Steve was looking at me, actually, I was going to the gym for about a year, and 3 times a week. And every time I went in, I was pushing on the machines, doing the same routine, treadmill. And I could see this guy standing in the corner, always just shaking his head. And in the end, I just cracked. And I said, mate, what are you shaking your head at? You've been doing that for almost a year now. And that was Steve. Yeah. That's how we met originally. So, and we became friends because of that. And that's when he said, this doesn't work for you, does it? Yeah. Come out into the woods. Okay. And that was just, you know, it was just when it happened for me. You know, it was what I was looking for. Yeah. When you came alive, I guess. Like you said at the beginning, like real. And that's what we want, as many people who have got, you know, anyone to come along, but it's particularly people that are struggling with addiction. Like, you know, at whatever level. It doesn't have to be the obvious addictions that you see, you know, what you might consider to be homeless people drunk on the street or whatever. That's the stereotype. But I defy anyone to say they're not addicted in some way, shape or form, you know, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. You know, I'm as guilty as everyone else, or anyone else, possibly more so with my addictive nature. But I defy anybody to come out into those woods and come back and say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, you know. It's like if you go for a run and you come back, I don't think anyone's ever said, unless you got injured, obviously, God, I wish I hadn't done that run, you know. And it's not, you know, we were in the Times newspaper a couple of weeks ago, and I cringed a little bit at the headline because it said the new exercise trend hit in the UK, which is working out in the woods. And actually it's the oldest, you know, it's the most primal thing we can do. Get out in the woods and just be out there. And it doesn't, you know, we work with everyone from people who've never done any kind of fitness through to professional triathletes, you know, and everyone in between. And through Steve's encouragement, I went away and got myself qualified as a British athletics coach as well. Nice. So,
really nice. Very cool. Okay, we're going to take a quick break now, but I want to hear more, I guess, the background to kind of some of your story, but also what comes out kind of as a result when these people have kind of got involved in your courses, and anyone, how people can benefit. So we'll be back after this short break. thank you for joining me here in part 2 with Carl Adams from Primal Roots. And yeah, it's wonderful to hear you talk about, I guess, how much you've got from this change in kind of outdoor fitness and so much more by the sounds of it, and then being able to give that back to people who, like you said, are suffering addiction, homelessness. But I want to go a little bit deeper now maybe on your story and kind of what was your journey up until that point where you were in the gym pushing the weights and Steve rolling his eyes at you, that meant that kind of when those two worlds came together, it clicked so much, and why you were able to bring so much passion. Yeah, take us back a little bit.
So the origin story probably goes back to the 60s in London. So my dad is a publican, and he comes from a line of publicans and bookmakers. So my granddad was one of the first bookmakers in London, legal bookmakers, and he was doing it for like 30 years before that. Yeah. You know, so addiction was pretty much in my blood, and I know it's still there. I still battle with it, but I went into that industry myself. So I came out of school, I did a 2-year carpentry apprenticeship, and I liked that, but the firm I worked for went bust. And the easy thing was to go and work in the pubs with my dad, so I did that. And just loved it. I don't want to, quite often when you hear stories of recovery, it's about like horrific stories of drunkenness, and there was a lot of that, but there was a lot of fun too, and I had and most of it was in this town. Okay. It was really, really good. I made so many friends, had some brilliant nights, and it was good, but while it was good, so I did that for 10 years. So from the age of 18 to 28, I was in the pub industry, and I was licensee, and drinking heavily, really heavily. I even had a spell where I didn't drink in Folkestone for about 18 months, but I replaced that with cocaine and ecstasy, and just, of course it works while it works, but then when it breaks down, it doesn't. And I knew that had to end, but at the age of 28, I decided with my girlfriend, now wife, to buy a round the world ticket, and that was one of the major turning points. So we bought a round the world ticket, and we ended up going to all kinds of places we never planned going to. So we ended up in East Africa, and that was where my interest in community really was formed, because particularly in an experience of one day, I did get fascinated by the political systems of a lot of the countries we went to. Okay. But I was in Botswana one day, and it was a quite affluent community. So why are people in supermarkets in suits? And this is a well-managed country on the face of it. And the same day I journeyed into Zimbabwe next door, and it was apocalyptic. It was Armageddon, and I was just fascinated by this is literally the same earth, and yet these people are okay and these people are dying. What happened there? So I got really into reading about all of that, not just those two countries, but the international system. Yeah. And on the back of that, I applied to, just a cheeky one, I was like 30 years of age, a couple of GCSEs, and I applied to University of Kent to study international relations. I thought, I've got ideas above my station. I sent off this email by the side of the Nile. I was at the source of the Nile in Uganda at the time, and I thought, I'm not going to hear anything back. And I got one back a couple of days later, and they said, this is really interesting, come and see us. And I said, well, I can't, I'm in Uganda. And they said, well, let's do it on the phone. So I ended up, cut a long story short, I ended up coming home from that world trip, and I came back in the June, and in the September I started university at the age of 30. So everyone there was 18 or 20 or whatever they were. But I was really into it just because of that experience I just had travelling the world. University would have been wasted on me at the age of 20. It would have just been a complete carnage. But I really, really did well, and I loved it. And I ended up being offered a scholarship to stay on and do a master's from an American institution. And they wanted me to specialise in what it meant to be community. So what does community mean? Like from the nuclear family up to the international system, up through the municipality, the kingdom, the state, and the province, and the continent. And how does community work? I suppose it's quite apt now in the political situation we're looking at. But I really loved that, and I came out of that, I handed in my dissertation, which was about, it was actually how do we create a community of communities, and just by chance saw this advert that was about promoting social enterprise and how that there was possibly an appetite for a social enterprise movement in Kent. And I thought, what's social enterprise? I've never heard of that. And then when I looked into it, I thought, this is what I've been studying basically, but applied to business. And so, 8 years down the line, I'd helped a few out that I mentioned earlier, and that led up to the conversation with Steve. But really, all of that time, I would cut down on drinking. But what I really want to focus on with Primal Roots is this sense of responsibility we have. So a mentor of mine said, stop looking around for someone to save you. You are the person you've been waiting for. And it was that really that stuck in my mind. You know, we're not here for long. You know, none of us are getting out alive, all those cliches. And I was 40, 3 kids. I want to be around for as long as possible for them. And I picked up this book called Finding Ultra, which is by Rich Roll. He's 52 now, but at the time he wrote it, he was like in his mid-40s. But he had this epiphany on the night before his 40th birthday. He had this heart palpitation when he was going upstairs, and he looked at his daughter in bed, and she was 2 years old, and he thought, if I carry on like this, I'm not going to see you get married. He ended up becoming one of the world's fittest men within 3 years, so he didn't start training really till he was 40, and 3 years later he's on the front cover of Men's Health magazine as one of the fittest men on the planet, and he's running these ultra events. And I read that and I thought, I fancy a bit of that. And he lost 50 pounds. I was actually at one point, I was 60 pounds heavier than I am sat here today. So I had a lot of weight to lose. I'm a short fellow as well. So, and having that addictive personality, you know, some people say that I've replaced one addiction with another, and I always say, well, what's your point? You know, of course I have. There's that different trigger that if it applied in a different way is what's most powerful. And I'm not saying people need to run ultra marathons, that's my thing, but if they can apply that philosophy where, you know, I think, well, I know we're all of us are sitting on reservoirs of untapped potential, and that is what we want to get through to people at Primal Roots.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like the key is responsibility, of taking responsibility yourself, going, I'm the one that needs to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I was as guilty as anyone else, you know, until that mentor said to me, you stop looking for someone to save you. You've got to do it. And we get quite a bit of that in people that we work with. There's looking for a solution. People that go to the GP like 3 or 4 times a week, and some people do need to go to the GP, you know, frequently, but most people, it's not about, you're looking for a solution outside. That medication that you're going to end up being given, you might need that, but at least try this woodland workout first. If you don't, you know, it's not even we give you your money back, because like, you don't have to pay if you're feeling like that. And you'll be alongside people that are paying, you know, and that's what I love, getting people together. So homeless people together with millionaires sometimes. You know, and those conversations, you see them in the woods, because the workout is a great leveler, isn't it?
Because you're all tired, you're all sweating, you're all exhausted, and that's when you're most authentic, really, isn't it? A lot of the time. That's
it, and that's that. I love that word, authenticity. You can't, that's one thing you can't fake. You can't, and people sniff a rat out a mile away. So I think Steve's got a similar journey to mine, but different in many ways, and you should definitely get him on the show. But
definitely.
Those situations where we get people into that environment and we can say, look, this was us. That story I've just mentioned to you, it's not the most horrific addiction story you've ever heard, but you know, there is some darkness in there, and when it's ready to open up about that darkness, we always do. And there's a philosophy, a Japanese philosophy we also apply, and it's called kintsugi. Have you seen these ceramic bowls that are put back together with gold? So the word kintsugi is an art form, so it is about repairing pottery, broken pottery with gold, so repair with gold. And it's also a philosophy. So the broken part is not something to be hidden. It's actually the thing that makes it most beautiful. So that's what we want to hone in on the power of an addict who's turned it around. And those broken parts, those real dark moments, when you actually highlight them with gold, that's where the power lies. You know?
Definitely. Because they've got through it, they've come through it, and feeling better.
And you can go to all the therapy groups you want. You can go and speak to all of the experts you want. But unless you're sat in front of someone who's lived it, that authenticity, it doesn't sink in. It never sunk in with me. You know, I had to read that story of Rich Roll, and you know, many people much closer to home. And I relapsed more times than you can imagine, even then. And I was drinking on a low level up until last August even. So I haven't touched anything stronger than a coffee since August. And I'm 43 now, and I'm the best I've ever felt in my life. But it's that what Russell Brand actually calls that cheese level addiction, cheese grater. Sorry, cheese grater.
Yep.
So it's not that you're not cutting yourself. It's not like an obvious wound. You're just like scraping a bit off every weekend, you know, or every evening with the half bottle of wine or the 4 cans of, and I was doing that. You know, which, you know, I'm not knocking that, you know, but I've certainly got enough out of alcohol. You know, I had good times on it, and I've got more than my fair share of good times out of that, and that, you know, that relationship's ended now.
Yeah, and now it's a responsibility for what else is out there for you to enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and
through whatever else life brings.
Yeah. So my next, I've got again with that. When I started running, and cross country running in particular, 5K moved up to 10K, half marathons, and 50 milers, 100 milers, and in August I'm running across Scotland, which is 215 miles. I tried last year actually and failed, and that's another thing as well. The failure is possibly. I'd like to, Steve and I are both passionate about this, actually flip the script on failure, because failure, we almost need a new word for it, because every failure that we've been through has actually been a step forward in the right direction.
It's like the gold, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly,
the gold,
like
the kintsugi.
It's the building blocks, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, and it's really inspiring to hear your story and how that's given you so much kind of passion and responsibility for helping others in what you do, which is absolutely wonderful. So if people want to find out more about Primal Roots, website where they can find you, but also anything immediately they should be looking out for, or is it just sessions all the time, get online?
Yeah, so primalroots.org.uk is our website, and we're all over social media. I've got to work on that addiction too. So we have 12 sessions a week that run out of the Warren in Ashford. And we run sessions out of Bedgebury, Pine Eaton, the most beautiful place in Kent, I think, you know, for woodland workout. And we're also running corporate team building days. So we want to create opportunities, not just for fitness, but also for employment for people that are in recovery and people who have experienced homelessness. So what we want is coaches to come through, we can train them up, and then them to be paid to deliver sessions alongside us.
Really nice.
So when you pay for our sessions, it's not just for your own fitness, it's like a double feel-good factor, if you like.
Yeah, to support people to get back into work.
And just to come along as well, because again, don't be scared of failure, because there's no such thing as a failure in those woods. There's every walk of life you can imagine, especially in the early morning sessions.
Oh, definitely, I can imagine. Carl, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking. Thank you so much, and I just hope it goes from strength to strength, because it sounds wonderful.
Thanks.
Really good.
Cheers.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us here on today's Big Ideas show. And if you are someone who's doing great things, maybe you have great social projects, then please get in touch. This is actually our last episode for this season. We're going to have a short break, but we'll be back after the summer in September. Final words are just to say a big thank you to everyone who has supported us, not only on this episode, but all the ones that have come before. We have the Glass Whiteboard Company, we have the Grand here in Folkestone, and our contributors and crew. We have Hacks at Prisma Broadcast, Warren at Flourish, and Erin at 6-2. And we also have Hannah, Maddie, and Gary, who have been our wonderful crew throughout. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next season.